Welcome back to OMFS Essentials. Today, we navigate the delicate anatomy around the eye, focusing on the periorbital incisions critical for accessing the orbital floor and infraorbital rim. In this area, surgical imperatives must be balanced with the paramount need for aesthetic preservation and the prevention of ocular complications like ectropion and prolonged edema. We will cover the four primary lower lid approaches along the superior approaches to the orbit. 1. Lower lid approaches, infraorbital rim and floor. These incisions provide access to the anterior orbital structures, critical for managing zygomatic and orbital floor fractures. A. Infraorbital incision. Location. Placed in the skin crease directly along the infraorbital ridge, extending from the medial to the lateral canthus. Indications. Excellent exposure for fixing fractures of the zygomatic bone, Lefort 2 fractures, and for accessing the orbital floor. Precautions. Do not extend the incision across the lateral canthus. Doing so can sever lymphatic channels, leading to significant and persistent postoperative edema. B. Subtarsal incision. Location. Placed in the lower palpebra, situated between the infraorbital and subciliary incisions, specifically along the tarsal plate. Indications. Used for exposure of the infraorbital rim and orbital floor. Precautions. Similar to the infraorbital approach, avoid crossing the lateral canthus to prevent damage to lymphatic drainage and subsequent edema. C. Subciliary incision. Location. Made approximately 2 mm, 2 mm, inferior to the eyelashes, running the entire length of the lid. Technique. The initial incision is through the skin only, exposing the underlying muscle. It may be extended laterally for up to 1.5 centimeters in a natural crease. Indications. A popular choice for infraorbital rim fracture fixation. Precautions. Avoid superior extension laterally to align with the lines of minimal skin tension. The major risk is ectropion, the outward turning of the eyelid margin due to contraction during the healing process. D. Transconjunctival incision. Location. Placed on the lower palpebral conjunctiva, between the tarsal plate and the inferior conjunctival fornix. It is entirely inside the eyelid. Technique. The eyelid is everted, and a lateral canthotomy may be performed to increase access. Indications. Preferred for accessing the orbital floor with the best cosmetic outcome, as the incision is hidden. Precautions. Protection of the globe of the eye is mandatory, often achieved with a corneal shield. Medially, the incision must not extend beyond the lacrimal punctum to prevent damage to the tear drainage system. 2. Superior orbital approaches. These incisions provide access to the zygomaticofrontal and superior orbital areas. A. Lateral brow incision. Location. A 2 cm incision made within the eyebrow. Technique. The incision must be made parallel to the hair follicles to avoid cutting the shafts, which could retard future hair growth. The incision should be made straight down to the periosteum in a single stroke. Indications. Exposure of the frontozygomatic suture and the lateral portion of the supraorbital rim. Precautions. Avoid extending the incision inferiorly along the orbital rim, as this crosses the skin tension lines and results in a more conspicuous scar. B. Crow's foot incision. Location. An extension of the lateral brow incision that follows a crow's foot wrinkle laterally at least 6 mm above the lateral canthus. Indications. Used when greater inferior and lateral exposure is required than the standard brow incision provides. C. Upper lid blepharoplasty incision. Location. Placed in a skin wrinkle of the superior eyelid, typically 10 mm above the upper lid margin. Technique. It often follows the supratarsal fold, extending laterally over the orbital rim. Indications. provides access while utilizing an incision line common in cosmetic surgery, aiding in aesthetic camouflage. Summary: surgical access to the orbit requires careful consideration of both the required exposure and the aesthetic outcome. The transconjunctival approach offers the best cosmesis, but is technically challenging. The subciliary, subtarsal, and infraorbital incisions trade greater access for visible scars and specific risks like ectropion. Superiorly, the lateral brow incision provides a concealed gateway to the zygomaticofrontal area, but requires meticulous technique to preserve hair growth. The periorbital area is unforgiving. Success is measured not just by fracture fixation, but by the absence of visible scarring, ectropion, and persistent edema. Precision in incision placement and layer-by-layer dissection is non-negotiable. You've been listening to OMFS Essentials. Subscribe for more concise, evidence-based episodes. And as always, keep mastering the essentials.